Thank you, Martine. And gosh, that is loud. I'll stand well away from that. And thank you to Deb, and particularly to the team, for putting on such a fabulous event. I'm really looking forward to being here all today and this evening. So I'm not quite as exciting as Edgar. I hope everyone knows who Edgar is. And I do promise you, I'm not going to breathe fire at everybody here, but I am going to try and give you quite a lot of encouragement on this, the 40th anniversary of the EOA and the beginning of the next 40 years. A little bit of encouragement and also just a little bit of challenge as to how we can go about making the most of employee ownership and what it offers and the important role it plays in this country. So before I come on to some of that, we need to get a little bit serious. Deb and others have talked about what's going on in the world, and I need to sort of take us down a bit to get real about what's going on before we then come back up in terms of thinking about the opportunities that we've got before us. You sort of don't need me to tell you that there are some pretty big challenges facing the world at the moment, certainly this country. You're seeing extraordinary turbulence politically, again, not just here, but really across the world. You know, Spain have had 4 elections in 4 years, and they've just had another one which is pretty inconclusive. So if we're feeling a bit sorry for ourselves with the number that are coming along, we're actually trailing slightly behind them. But it's also what's happening in the economy as a whole. Some of you know that I do some work on the productivity side of things, and productivity was described once as a death word used by economists, but it's actually quite important because it is in fact the fuel that really determines whether or not people get pay rises. It is actually what determines whether or not the economy as a whole gets more competitive or not, whether we grow or we don't. And over the last 10, 12 years, we've seen an extraordinary period where we've seen almost no productivity growth. To put this in context, if it had carried on growing at the rate that it had been for the 10 years prior to 2007, then right now, every household in the country would be £5,000 richer. So it's a huge, huge gap that we're seeing. Another little quick example of this is we've seen as much productivity growth in the last 10 years that we saw every 15 months for the 40 years prior to 2008. It really is quite extraordinary how much this has slowed down. And it's not surprising, therefore, that quite a lot of people are perhaps concluding that things aren't just working quite as they should do for them, and they're not getting in and on in life in the way that they perhaps expected to. And one of the ways I think about this is society and politics and business. There are sort of 3 parts to this, and just imagine in your mind a circle, a big circle with three parts to it. There's business, and that's what we do. There is politics and the politicians, and then there's people, just the people in the country, as 3 parts of that. Now, those people in the country have seen no productivity growth. There hasn't been wage growth, real wage growth, at anything like the level that we had been seeing previously. We've had austerity actually biting into public services and such like over the last 10 years. Business have been sort of getting on with doing what they can do. Nothing wrong with that. Businesses are here to make money. We're here to make money. We are businesses. We're not charities. But of course, technology is changing the way that business works. And so we are in a period of time where there is a bit more of a case of winner takes all. If you've got the killer technology or the killer platform, you'll be able to take more of the market than you perhaps could previously. And also there's a bit of a sense that as winner takes all, some people are taking more than they're giving in terms of what they're creating. So there's some issues there. And then, of course, politicians. Well, they've been in a bit of a mess for quite a long time now. And one of the things you would look to politicians to do is to actually regulate business and try and make sure that those 3 elements stay in balance, that people can't get too far ahead in one without taking account of one of the others. What's been happening, though, is politicians haven't been very good at that of late. They've been very distracted, of course, by the obvious issue that's facing us. But even that issue, in fact, has its origins, in part, in the fact that these 3 elements aren't working very well together. Of course, people get concerned about the effects of globalization. If their factory is shut and there's a sense the jobs have been moved to another country, they are obviously understandably get concerned about globalization. People get concerned if they're not getting jobs, they start worrying about things like immigration. But politicians, perhaps instead of saying, what do we need to be doing to make this whole thing work well, to get elected, there's a tendency for them to pander actually towards some of the fears around globalization and immigration, when the actual analysis says that those aren't really the things that have slowed this economy down. They're not actually, they have a role to play, but they're not actually the things that are making the biggest difference. And of course, what they stop doing when they're concentrating on talking to all these people is probably thinking about how do you create business that operates in a cycle that stays in balance. So we've got quite a number of big issues, and that's before we even get into the fact that technology is going to really change the workplace. Automation and AI are here, and they're going to come here big time soon, and it will affect people's jobs. So I said I was going to take you down a bit, and that's sort of, I've done the down bit. That's the sort of some of the reality that we're facing. But it is also the opportunity. Because if you think about those three parts of that circle, and you look at that through the lens of employee ownership, actually, if you think about our businesses as employee-owned businesses, we're the business, absolutely. The people who are in it own the business and are actively engaged in it. And actually, we have governance and systems which are geared towards keeping all of those things in balance all the time. And it's for this reason that I think this is a critical time for employee ownership. We may never be 50% of the economy, but at a time when things are quite broken and there are some big challenges, we have a particularly important role to play in making sure that we stay in balance and we keep things moving in the right direction. Now, I say that to you not because it is easy or because I think that we've got all the answers. You've probably seen that in the John Lewis Partnership, we've been having some pretty challenging results of late. We reported in September a first half loss, first time we've done that for many, many decades. We're still seeing right now very, very challenging conditions, particularly affecting our John Lewis business, slightly less so in our Waitrose business. And these are troubled times. But actually, one of the things that I reflect on when we're facing these challenging times is that when I think back over my time as chairman, it's actually often not the times when we've been most financially successful that I find that I'm proudest of the things we're doing in the partnership. And it is the times when we've been challenged through whatever time or cause that was, that we've sometimes reached for some of the most important decisions or innovations or changes, which are all about adapting our businesses for the future. We began life as a retailer back in the 1860s, and it wasn't until 1929 that we became a partnership. Now, as a partnership, we've actually become a much better retailer, and that's been great. But the simple truth is, given the way technology is changing the world, and indeed the way we all shop in this room, being a very, very good retailer means you just don't make as much money as you used to. It means you make a bit more than some other retailers, but you don't make as much money as you used to. And so we're in the midst, really, of realizing that our future lies not just being in trying to be a better and better retailer, but actually being more of a partnership. And this is where, despite some of the real challenges, and these are troubled times, so don't think that this is sort of we're skipping through the clover, enjoying all of this. This is difficult, tough times. But in fact, they're also quite invigorating because we're making changes and we're clarifying and sharpening the focus of what's really important in the business on the things that really, really matter. The fact is, we won't ever win as the John Lewis Partnership by trying to do more of what Amazon does or what Tesco does, being more like them. We will win by being more of a partnership. And you may have noticed that about a year ago, we rebranded both our businesses, John Lewis and Waitrose, to John Lewis and Partners and Waitrose and Partners. And I'm proud of the work the team did in terms of making that visually look appealing and making sort of a refresh for the brand. But there was something behind that which was much, much more important than the superficial appearance of our brands. What we were saying is we're going to compete through partners. We have about 83,000 partners in the business. And what we're really saying, is we need to get more serious and be more determined about competing through them. And we followed it up with a number of challenges within the business. And one of those is the challenge that we actually need to get to a position where our partners are generating 25% more value than the equivalent employee in another organization. 25% more value. If this room, I often say this to people, this room was jam-packed with John Lewis and Waitrose partners, and there was another room next door which was jam-packed with people working for one of our competitors, this room would cost around about 25% more. And I am delighted that that's the case, because of course our business is in business to return value to our people in lots of different ways. But of course that's only sustainable if we generate value of an equivalent amount. And while that might sound quite commercial, actually at the end of the day we are a business and we need to be commercial in this very competitive market. And by setting that challenge, it's enabled us then to turn our minds to saying, right, so what would you need to do to achieve it? And I just want to give you a flavor of some of the things that have gone on. The first is really about technology and people. Technology is changing so many different things. There are extraordinary opportunities with technology. And for all of our businesses, anybody here who thinks you can sort of check out of technology, it's just not an option that's available. If there's technology that's available that will help you to run your business better, you have to engage with it and use it. But what you don't have to do is just look at technology as your source of competitive advantage. What you can do is look at how you can take technology and use that to increase the contribution that each and every person in the business can make. And of course that means changing their jobs sometimes, it means losing some jobs sometimes and moving people on. There's a thing called robotic process automation, RPA is the lingo. We have lots of fairly mundane tasks in our business, and what we're finding is we can use that really quite extensively. If we have to have somebody moving a piece of data from one place to another, you can get a robot to do that at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without breaks. It's not a particularly great job. It's very difficult to say you're going to have somebody adding 25% more value if they're just doing that. So on the one hand, we are embracing all of that technology, and where jobs can be replaced with it, we are doing so. But on the other, we're really trying to embrace the opportunity that the combination of people and technology provides. Some of you may have heard that we're really pushing something called personal styling at the moment. And of course, you can shop, you can buy clothes, you can get looks online. But the fact is, as human beings, as people, we're relational. We like talking to people. And so one of the great successes we're seeing at the minute is by recruiting some people and training several partners to use their personalities to really engage with people about what do they like about how they look, what do they not like about how they look, how could we sit with them in a beautiful environment and help them to think about can they be a bit braver. I was talking to somebody who runs the police, is responsible for policing in the mayor's office in London. And she'd gone and done one of our personal styling appointments. And she said, I went in there and we had this amazing partner who said, you don't, she said, I don't normally wear red. She said, well, why don't you wear red? You could wear this is the color of the season. Try this, try that look. And by the way, when you get back to the office, all the people in the office will say, God, you look cool. And she said, and they did. It was amazing. She just felt a bit taller. And so what we're trying to do here is say, look, that actually in this world where technology is changing so much, people matter. We're going to compete not just by selling people clothes or TVs or sofas or food. We've got to compete by creating opportunities for people, our partners and our customers to come together in ways that really add value. And it's very exciting when you see it happening, and it gives me enormous optimism and enthusiasm for the potential of the future. Other areas, quickly, leadership. leadership is so, so important. And again, in this day and age where we're leading a retail business, there's a lot of tasks that need to happen. There's a lot of activities which we have to accomplish well. But again, if we want to get 25% more value out of our people, what we have to do instead is actually refocus our leadership teams on leading people. And we've done, again, a number of things on this. Actually, towards this year, we've took 8,000 of our managers, and we took them to another part of the NEC, each of them for a day over the course of about a week, to really do a big reset on what it means to be a leader in the John Lewis Partnership. Now, I'm proud of many of the people we've got. We've got great leaders in our business, but what we've recognized is actually we need to reset that, raise the bar, give people more tools, more support, and more encouragement to become real specialists in people. And these have been big changes. Another area that we've been changing is the organization and the structure of our business. If we want to be more of a partnership, we actually have to have the courage not to continue to run our businesses to retail brands. And so you may have seen about 6 weeks ago, we announced that we would be bringing together the whole partnership, no longer having managing directors of our two businesses and running it as one partnership. Now, these are big and disruptive changes, and of course they're painful, they have consequences for people, but they're all examples of why, if we want to thrive in the future, we can't just sit in our laurels and sort of think that with the John Lewis Partnership we've managed to succeed this far and we can keep on going and doing more of what we're doing. We need to be restless and ambitious about changing our business. And then the final point I would draw to your attention is our democracy and our governance. Somewhere in the audience is Chris Earnshaw, who has recently been elected by our Partnership Council as our first full-time president of the council. And I'm thrilled about that, because leading a democratic organization and the democratic groups within it is a difficult thing to do. And it needs really high-quality leadership. And so in Chris, we've got someone who's going to be leading the charge and working with people to make that happen and do that better than we ever have done before. So I guess all of those examples are about saying that we face some very difficult challenges. We have, within employee ownership, a model which is actually very, very well suited to meeting and in beating many of the challenges that are affecting the economy all around us. What we have to recognize is that employee ownership is no picnic. It's not about everything being fine. It's actually about evolving and talking and recognizing, as and when things are difficult, the need to change. And what we've been doing in the partnership is recognizing that we are facing some serious challenges. It's not just a tough period of time we have to get through, although we will. In fact, it's an opportunity to reset the organization, to develop and to re-engage it in a different way, and to actually rejuvenate employee ownership within our business, which I'm obviously very proud to say is a very long-standing member of EOA, but is also one that needs to be rejuvenated and developed and changed for the future. So as we are now at this 40th anniversary of the EOA and we're stepping into the next 40 years, what I'd really urge you to do is recognize just how important it is that what we do, both within our businesses, but as an example of how the economy can find a balance. And then secondly, to really embrace the opportunity to be restless in terms of evolving and developing our businesses and the way we run them, the way they work across the UK. There's huge opportunities when you look at it through that sort of lens, and it's very, very important that we embrace them and really grasp them. It's invigorating and it's incredibly important. Thank you.